the thing that people really need to understand with coaching programs is they're not paying you for 60 hours of training. They're not paying you for the coaching. They're not paying you for the features and benefits. They're not paying you for any of this stuff. They're paying for the transformation and the end result that you're providing them.
Research shows that the probability of selling to an existing customer is 60 to 70% versus the probability of selling to a new prospect is 5 to 20%. And that existing customers are 50% more likely to try new products and spend 31% more when compared to new customers. And with the cost of acquisition of new customers increasing more than 50% over and with new customer acquisition costs increasing more than 50% in the past 5 years, retaining customers is more important than ever. Hi, I'm Natasha Mitchell, and today my guest is Alex Kerr, and we're going to be talking about client success and how that can help you retain those valuable clients and keep them coming back for more. Alex has been in the online business world since 2017, and he's had a very rapid career growth working with Audiobook Income Academy. He started there as head coach and then served as their chief customer officer in their publishing life branch, which is one of the largest online coaching businesses in the industry. He's done over 1,000 one-on-one calls and over 160 hours of group coaching, and was an integral part of getting their business publishing life to an 8-figure level in 2021. So he really knows his stuff. And he now runs an online coaching business, helping 6-figure coaches hit their monthly revenue goals and with the clients they already have. So welcome to the show today, Alex.
Thank you, Natasha. That was a fantastic introduction.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I think it's so important where we are in the world right now. People are looking for more ways to keep connected with their existing clients. So I'm going to dive in, and I can't wait for you to share some of your nuggets of wisdom with us after all of your experience so far. So as I mentioned, you've been in the online space for a few years now. You know, the rapid change of online world, 2017 to 2022 is almost like a lifetime. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey in entrepreneurship and any key takeaways you've had from those over 1,000 one-on-one calls.
Yeah, for sure. So to speak to the change just right on the front end, I feel like things are even pretty different from even what they were in 2020 versus 2022, especially in the online coaching space. So anyways, there's a lot of stuff for us to talk about. But in regards to where I really started with entrepreneurship, that takes us back to 2015 when I was still in college, and I was actually farming worms in my parents' basement. Actually, funnily enough, I have an environmental science background. And I was totally convinced at that period of time that I was going to be a farmer. And I got super, super obsessed with regenerative agriculture. And I was studying permaculture and all this sort of stuff. And it sort of manifested in me, again, farming worms. That went pretty much as well as one would expect. And anyway, so I, transitioned away from that. And to be honest, I hated college. So I always knew the entire time that whatever the path was that I was on was not going to lead me to where I knew I needed to be. So even though I did finish college, I got my bachelor's degree and everything, in the back of my mind, I always knew I had to do something else. So that's when in 2017, I had my first introduction with Bitcoin and had a very nice run with that. And with those funds, I decided to attempt my very first attempt to build a brand in the regenerative agriculture space with my cousin. I had literally no idea what I was doing. So luckily, he actually took the mantle with that and is continuing forward with that nowadays with, my help. But back then it didn't manifest into anything at all. It was just basically a logo, an Instagram page, and a half-baked idea. So then I tried drop shipping. That didn't really work out too well. Not because drop shipping doesn't work, just because I was brand new. I had literally no idea what I was doing. Anyways, continued with college. Again, the suffering continued to compound on itself. Every single day I had to commute 2 hours there and back from school. And I was really getting a taste of what my life would be like had I submitted to that 9-to-5 lifestyle, entering the matrix as it were. And it sucked. It was disgusting. in every single way. And again, like I said, I knew that there had to be another way. So in 2019, again, I'm watching YouTube videos, and the guy that I learned dropshipping from did an interview with the Mickelson twins, who are the founders of Audiobook Income Academy and publishinglife.com. And basically, I watched that podcast. They're goofy, authentic, and of course, they were launching the 2.0 version of Audiobook Income Academy. They teach people how to make money online through Kindle direct publishing and also on Audible. So selling paperbacks and ebooks and audiobooks from the frame of being an entrepreneur and essentially info products. And at the end of that podcast, I basically sold sort of some of the last morsels of my Satoshis to pay for this program. And pretty much the rest is history. I bought the program the day it launched. And at the time, it was extremely easy to make money in the publishing space. So it was an extremely easy way to kickstart your business and get some cash flow generated. And so it was almost guaranteed, as long as you did the work, that you were going to make anywhere between $1,200 to $1,800 with your first audiobook. So it was just a matter of getting the thing done. So, that was obviously a huge incentive. Continued forward with that. Then I started really engaging heavily in their Facebook community around the fall of 2019 and then the beginning of 2020. The program was growing, and I essentially started coaching people for free just in the Facebook group unknowingly. I was engaging in masterminds, setting stuff up, and really just becoming like a part of the community. But again, it was all unconscious. There was no ulterior motive to it. I didn't even know what a coach was at the time. I just wanted to help. And I liked the feeling that I got from connecting with everyone in that community. Fast forward a little bit, in April of 2020, they were looking for a community manager. Because I was in the Facebook group all the time, I was the first person to file that application, got on an interview with them the next day, and they told me, hey, Alex, you pretty much already got the job, before we even started talking, just because, they saw what I was doing in the Facebook group. They were shell shocked that I was just kind of helping people, like jumping on Zoom calls, just helping them troubleshoot publishing stuff. I guess my vibe and their vibe, we just connected instantly. So from there, I just started trying to give them as much value as humanly possible. I was broke driving for Lyft. I had just graduated college the year before, and I told myself there was absolutely no way that I was going to get an environmental science job, because what that would look like for me is either sitting in an office in Atlanta and dealing with bureaucracy, policy stuff that doesn't move the ball forward with making the world more sustainable or whatever. So I forced myself to make the publishing stuff work, and I knew that they were my ticket to actually making this stuff happen. And of course they were. And so out of respect, honor for the opportunity, and just the whole obvious reality of it all, I just gave them 110%. Like, I just poured my heart and soul into their community. And the three of us just created this badass team where we just we got the company to 8 figures in less than 12 months. It was freaking awesome. And after, I was only like the community manager or whatever for like 2 or 3 weeks. And then Christian and Rasmus, they were like, hey, Alex, I think we want to turn this into a coaching program, because, we wanted to increase the value of the product, the brand. And they pretty much told me, look, dude, we haven't done this before. You haven't done this before. We're just going to figure this out. So I pretty much got full reign. I completely ran this brand new department. It was really just the three of us plus our COO and some virtual assistants who were running the support team. And I just figured it out. I'm like, there's so many students in the program, because there are no one people in that space, that I had no shortage of coaching calls whatsoever. And so those 1,000 one-on-one calls that I've done were within a 12-month period.
Wow.
So just insane, the amount of volume that I was doing. And also in the beginning, and there's a lot of things we can touch on, what we did wrong, and sort of how things apply to the make money online space versus a high ticket coaching space, which is what I'm in. So through basically just massive action and through necessity, I was forced to figure out what was the best way to really coach people. To speak to this point specifically, in regards to how to coach, one of the people, Michael Bungay-Stanier, frames 7 things that you need to ask all of your clients. And one thing that Michael talks about in the book is this idea of the advice monster, where on coaching calls, you pretty much take out all the oxygen in the room and just start pounding your client with what you think they need to do. And that's based off of your previous clients or just things that you're hearing from other people. Unfortunately, it's just not an effective way to coach. So that's essentially what I was doing in the very beginning, because again, I didn't know, none of us knew what we were doing at the time. So the second I started applying the coaching habit framework to the coaching calls, night and day difference. I mean, people started responding just like massively to the coaching calls. And, you know, when you really start coaching people, and I'm sure you've experienced the tactical stuff, that like the actual content inside the program is not really what the real challenge is. Right. And it's not really the thing that's holding them back. It's typically personal issues or self-worth issues or what have you. And the job of a coach in its most essential form is to have their client, you lead them to their own solutions through asking Socratic questions. That's all it is. And so while you know what the answer is in like 95% of cases, you're not telling them what to do. You're asking them the questions for them to lead themselves to their own solution. And while they think they want to, the best coaching calls, the client feels like they discovered the solution on the call with you. But they don't know that it was a completely calculated conversation the entire time. It feels organic, it is genuine, and you're just asking questions. But it has this feeling of discovery on the call, and that's really what you're there to do, as opposed to a consultant where it's kind of this sterile. Here's the plan. These are your problems. This is what you do. Good luck. Let me know if you run into challenges. That's kind of at least the way that I perceive it.
I love the journey. It's the quintessential entrepreneurial journey. Scrappy, trying lots of things, testing them out, seeing what you like, seeing what you don't like. So I love that you've been able to do that. I think the journey, particularly for entrepreneurs, is never much of a straight line. So, you know, I think you're lucky that you've found your passion so early in your career. I think for some people, including myself, I went down that more traditional path for many, many years before I decided, hey, this isn't the right path. So I really love what you did there. A couple of takeaways for me around that is, you know, a lot of people just think that it's a very one-sided transaction when it comes to selling a product or service. And I love that you highlighted the way that you were able to get the job that you wanted and ultimately now running your own business, and serve people, was actually serving people for free and giving like immense amount of value. And, you know, I think we often hear that, but I think people underestimate what really is considered huge value these days. And really, huge value is considered huge value, not like, you know, one little piece show up for 5 minutes. Like, huge value is huge value. So I love that you articulated that. And to comment on your last kind of piece of that in terms of your big takeaways from all of those calls is sort of how to help really coach people. And I know we have a lot of coaches listening now. It's quite interesting because I would consider myself somewhat of a hybrid between coaching and consulting. But one of the biggest challenges I see with clients, and I think you've touched on it really well, is that a client will come and say, Natasha, I have this problem. Tell me the answer to this problem. And my approach, even because I've been a consultant in the corporate world for such a long time, is to make sure I ask a lot of questions before that, because what I usually find is that the problem that people think they're trying to solve is not really the problem they think they're trying to solve. And if we don't get to the root cause by asking a lot of questions about what is the problem we're really here to solve, I can't provide the right tactics, the specific tactics. Obviously, the mindset and personal piece comes in, but the specific tactics to put into action. I see it time and time again. And I made the error in my own career early on. It's like, oh yeah, well, I think you need this, go off and do that. And then, you know, 3 months into doing that tactic, they're like, well, that's not really what I wanted the outcome to be, or I'm not enjoying that, or I'm not serving. So I've really been disciplined with myself to ask lots of questions up front to make sure we're really identifying what the core problem is.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like you, I also am sort of a hybrid between a coach and a consultant nowadays, which is actually a welcome change for me. I kind of prefer the consultancy side of things in regards to, the current business that I'm running and everything. But my clients are coaches. So of course that's important. And that is what my background is in. Now, to speak to what you mentioned as well, to what the real challenge actually is. Actually, before we get into that, I do want to close out the story with the twins, because where things actually got interesting was in December and January, or December of 2020 and January of 2021. And in Q1 of 2021, the company scaled to an 8-figure level in the blink of an eye. And I was the only person doing the fulfillment at the time. And when you're getting literally hundreds of students a day, that presents a very real challenge. It's one of those things, nice problems to have, but it can be, at that time, it was pure chaos. Just pure chaos. It was like drinking out of a fire hose nonstop the entire time. But one thing that we were always grateful and conscious of is that I actually heard Dan Martell say this in a video I watched a few days ago, where, today's challenges were yesterday's goals. And we knew that the entire time that we signed up to do this. We put the gas in the tank, slammed it on the floor, and started running the ads. Christian filmed an ad that went completely viral. Like 30 million people saw it in like a 2-week period. It was just completely insane. And so that forced me to learn how to scale a team. So I scaled a team of 13 coaches within, I think it was like a 3-week period. Of course, I had to set up the training process with that, how to manage them, how to make sure the quality was the same as what I was outputting, and then of course, how that fits in with the offer, and what's the plan, the overall plan of like the client journey, and the whole thing. Because it wasn't just a course anymore like it was, 8 months before that. Now we actually transitioned into a real coaching program, and one of the biggest ones in the entire industry, not just like in the publishing space. So that's really where my expertise comes from, is in that moment. And I know it can be kind of obnoxious to talk about one's credentials like that, but the fact of the matter is that I've done more coaching calls in 1 year than most people have in 3 to 4 in the coaching space. And so while I haven't been, at this game for 10 years or whatever, I do have a lot of experience to speak to that. And also, as you mentioned, Natasha, I'm extremely, extremely lucky in the position that I got myself in. One thing that I wanted to mention that you touched on is, what is the real challenge that the clients are actually facing? So we can actually break this down into multiple points, but I think I'd like to start off with what I perceived the challenge to be back then. And I actually made a YouTube video about it. And what it really is, at least from what I observed at the time, was I saw that all of our clients, they knew what they were supposed to do because it was in the course. They knew that they had to do it, but they didn't want to do it. And so where the mess started to happen was, they tried to do all of these little things to try to circumvent the challenge of just doing the one thing that was staring them in the face the entire time. And that got people in the amount of money that was wasted from the clients trying to do the things that perhaps other entrepreneurs were trying to lure them into to try to circumvent this one real challenge, which of course would move the ball forward, was immense, like thousands and thousands of dollars. And then they would try all that stuff, and they would come back to me and say, I should have listened to you the first time, Alex. And that's not like a, I told you so thing. It sucked. I hate hearing that, because I would rather the person just do the thing the first time so that we can move forward as efficiently as possible. And at the time, of course, naively, I sort of believed that it was the client's fault that they were doing this, because on the surface, the course was extremely clear. They all said, this was the best program in the entire industry. That was the customer's feedback. We were very clear on the coaching calls on what exactly to do. There was accountability structures in place, but it still wasn't getting done. But, nowadays, looking back on that, there's a lot of things that could have been improved, and ultimately it doesn't serve anyone to blame the customer. And it wasn't their fault. It was our fault. So how do you solve that problem? That's the thing. It's like, how do we actually solve that problem? And So there's a few ways that we can attack this. I'm sure you have coaches that are doing one-on-one stuff and coaches that are doing group coaching stuff, and it looks a little bit different for each one, but it does sort of tie back to the fundamental thing we talked about earlier of the actual skill of coaching. So to speak to the real challenge in a one-on-one scenario, a lot of one-on-one coaches, unfortunately, they do a lot of the blabbering on the call. They take up all of the oxygen in the room, and they're basically teaching and educating their client on the call on what needs to happen as opposed to truly coaching them. And one way that you can very easily avoid this is by simply having a training portal for them to go through. A lot of one-on-one coaches don't do that because it takes time, but the less effective your training program is, the more that you're going to have to overcome that on the coaching calls. And so the solution to that is to have your Kajabi, Teachable, or even just a Google Drive portal be structured in such a way to where when people get on, let's say it's a 90-day program, week 1, we're onboarding. Week 2, we're talking about X. Week 3, we're talking about Y. So that when they get on the call, we can solve those challenges specific to week 2, week 3, so on and so forth. And we're not just running around all over the place and wondering why we're not moving forward. It's because there isn't really a North Star. Now, the same is true in a group coaching scenario, but at scale, it becomes a lot more important. So just to reiterate that point, the less effective the actual program itself is, the more your coaches are going to have to fulfill on the offer. And that is going to manifest catastrophically. You're going to have a bloated coaching team, and your clients aren't going to get results. You're going to create a top-down, top-heavy organization. And from there, you're stuck in this place where you have a bunch of people that need to stay on the team because the clients need the coaching. The thing that people really need to understand with coaching programs is they're not paying you for 60 hours of training. They're not paying you for the coaching. They're not paying you for the features and benefits. They're not paying you for any of this stuff. They're paying for the transformation and the end result that you're providing them. And if you had a magic button that you could just have them press that got them that end result instantly without any coaching, it would be infinitely valuable. And so the coaching itself is just a means to an end. So all of the energy when it comes to crafting the offer is going into the coaching side of things, but it's not going into getting the actual client to their end destination. And so that's where I've seen a lot of challenges, because people think that the coaching is the answer. And I would just say, again, the coaching is a means to an end. Of course, unlimited coaching in some respects is valuable, but if you actually craft your offer in the training program in such a way that they don't really need it, then you can actually have your coaching position itself in such a way that it's there for the most difficult challenges that your clients are facing. And then that's when you're really, truly going to get them a lot of results. So
first of all, your ability to be able to speak to the most value adds in coaching comes from your experiences. And I think it doesn't matter whether you feel a bit obnoxious. Sometimes you've done 1,000 calls, but actually that intensity of that experience gave you 15 years of experience in 1 year. So I think it's important for people to recognize that. And again, I think we're in a much faster moving time now, and there's so many other pieces that go into being an experienced coach. So my takeaway from that is for people maybe thinking, oh, they're not quite ready to go out there, or they don't have the experience, I would just take away from that, you do have a lot of experiences coming in, and sometimes those most critical experiences in your life or most intense experiences in your life are so powerful in coaching people. Secondly, I just think getting to the root cause of the problem is really important. We're talking very specifically about coaching, but I think in anyone who's providing any kind of info product can get stuck in this cycle of, how do I do the group coaching versus the one-on-one coaching? I think you've made some very valuable points. And I think there's a real distinction there between the coach and consultant. And I think as a coach or a consultant, you need to consider the role that you're playing, and as the client, setting the expectation. So I love the idea of having more training content, etc., for people to go through, so that the actual coaching is in response to some pre-work they've already done. We're going to talk a little bit more about why people fall off the wagon, so to speak, or don't get the results that they want, as we speak about sort of client success. And it's something I like to set as an expectation when I am coaching or consulting with my clients, of what they will do and what I will do for them. And sometimes it gets blurred line of where the implementation is and what the client needs to do. And the last takeaway from that is, doesn't matter how good the training is or how good the coaching is, there's something I think as a coach and a consultant that you really need to help clients do. And that is to not do the shortcuts. And I look at people time and time again, and I say, oh, well, why is Alex being so successful and I'm not being successful? Because I'm following the same tactic as him. I'm showing up on Instagram. The difference between how you're showing up on Instagram and how I'm showing Instagram are miles apart. You're putting out professionally curated content, you're showing up regularly, you have a structure to how they're doing this versus, well, I'm doing that Instagram tactic, but I'm only showing up once a week and I'm only doing a story. I don't do any posts and reels, like how I implement that solution. Even though we're implementing the same solution, we're not going to get the same results because we're not putting in the same level of effort. So really helping clients narrow down that just one thing. I hear it a lot. People's like, oh yeah, you just need to do the one thing and do it really well. And then in the next piece, they're saying, well, yeah, just get on Facebook and do Facebook really well. And in the very same breath, they're saying, and then put that content on LinkedIn, YouTube. As soon as you've gone to those other prongs, even if it's relatively easy to do that, an individual's focus is taken off Facebook, because the ability to do those 5 other prongs is you need to have a LinkedIn account, you need to have a YouTube account, you need to understand the mechanics of that, you need to be able to load content on that. So what I'm seeing for client success is helping them to focus in on that one thing, limiting those leaks where they try and shortcut. So helping them stay accountable to that one thing. And I think why people start shortcutting much sooner than they need to or should is because there are multiple different messages coming to them. One is like, do one thing, and then immediately is like, yeah, do one thing, and then put that on 17 other platforms. It's either one thing or it's 17 platforms. It can't be a combination of both.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that reminds me of one thing. I heard Greg Hickman actually mention this on YouTube, of the 5 ones. Have you heard that before?
No, I haven't heard that one.
So I'm going to butcher this because I don't think I can remember all 5, but it's this, the essential idea is easy to take away. So 1 offer through 1 acquisition channel, 1 coach, and 1 something else for 1 year. And so that framework, I think, is extremely helpful for beginners and even people who are going from the 6 to 7 figure level, because there's a lot of comparison going on. And you can see people who are, flexing super hard on Instagram or LinkedIn and what have you, and they're posting all over the place and they're saying they're making 7 figures a month or whatever they're saying. And you think, oh, I need to do that. That's most certainly not the case. And that's something that I've also found is hard to communicate to complete beginners, is the importance of niching down, and then also how just doing the one thing for 1 year is so powerful. So it's really about having a long-term mindset with that stuff. And I completely agree with everything that you said.
Yeah, and ability for us to stay consistent when and that one thing and put in the effort, whether it's 6 months or 1 year. When the money's tight, when the budgets are tight, that's a hard place to stay in. But you've experienced that. I've experienced that myself. And I see it with clients, those who are willing to do that and really stay the course. I call it setting a strong foundation, right? If you don't have that strong foundation, everything else is going to be weak. Every other tactic you try above that foundation is going to be weak because you haven't sort of put in that discipline. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so, and I empathize with people a lot when they hear this stuff. They might perceive me as someone being in like a position of authority or whatever, and perhaps I'm not doing this stuff, and things change when you move on. But because my current offer is a new business, and so even though I did all that stuff, I'm right back down to square one, and I had to apply these same exact principles. And it is a grind when like you're hammering away for months and months and months, and you're not getting any progress, and you're about to quit. Well, the same exact thing happened to me like just until this week, actually, where the feedback I was getting was great, but it's just a matter of trying to getting the inertia to really push the boulder down the hill. And so basically hit rock bottom. Then the next day I closed a $25,000 deal, which is the biggest deal of my life. So up until this point. And so it's just to say that, yes, I'm practicing what I'm preaching. I'm sure you are as well, Natasha. And the progress is not linear. Yeah. It happens, exponentially and randomly. But what is linear is the consistency. And as Alex Hormozi says, just doing the boring work.
Yeah.
And another thing that he says that I like a lot too, he also says advanced just means that people don't do the basics. So, and I agree with that as well. I'm sure we'll talk about that in just a moment with the acquisition side of things.
Yeah, cool. So let's chat about that. One thing we've talked about is really like seeding this conversation, because I think some of the tactics we've talked about right now really are part of this. But one thing we do know is that, once upon a time, everyone was getting $1 Facebook leads and it was super cheap, and seeming if you got in at the ground roots on that, you got a lot of traffic and have taken a lot of market share. But we know now, even for the big guys, that client costs have really increased dramatically, and the marketplace is much busier these days as well. People are understanding their opportunities in the online space. So there's more people offering similar things. The question is, how do we stand out in this place? And specifically when it comes to client success, why is helping clients be successful so important when this is the framework that we're working within?
Yeah, for sure. And I love this part of the conversation, because this is something that I absolutely need and want to talk about. But I want to make sure everyone understands that I am not an anti-lead gen guy. I think lead generation is the foundation and the lifeblood of you growing your business. Everyone should be doing at least 3 to 4 hours of lead generation every single day if you want to see your business grow.
And wait, did you hear that? 3 to 4 hours every single day, if you're wondering what it really takes to be consistent around lead generation. Thank you, Alex.
Yes. And to speak back to the previous thing about the 5 1s, you're not doing, 30 minutes of outbound and then 45 minutes of producing YouTube content, or, just paying, PPC with the inbound. Like, you're doing 3 to 4 hours of one type of lead generation through one channel. So whether that's cold outbound on Facebook, that's what you're doing for 3 to 4 hours a day. And going deep in that regard is really what is going to get you the results. So I'm going to explain the overarching environment that client success stands within in the marketplace now. Is that there's a culture right now in regards to scaling from 5 to 6 and 6 to 7 and 7 to 8 figures of just acquiring more clients, just more, which, as I stated, is essential. But when if you're someone who's coming into the marketplace and you're going to teach, let's just say outbound lead gen, for example, and the tactics are very clear, everybody knows what to do with that. You hire a VA, they prospect on Facebook through, Phantom Buster, Instagram through Profile Mate, LinkedIn with Lead Leaper, D7 Lead Finder. They scrape all these people's contact information. You get a script. The way that you write the script is you open them with some interesting personalized headline with some nice copy. You address the problems that you recognize in their business and how you can actually help them. You address the social fact that you came in completely cold and now you're building some level of rapport. You then show your authority by displaying some case studies and some testimonials and all that good stuff. And then you do a call to action for them to book a call with you. And then you hire the VA to blast this stuff out everywhere. You scale it by getting multiple social media accounts. You make sure that those social media accounts are running through routers and everything looks super legit. And you just do this nonstop every single day. As Simon Sinek talks about a lot, the difference between finite and infinite games, lead generation is an infinite game. And then with the inbound stuff, there's 1,000,001 videos on YouTube on how to run Facebook ads, on how to run YouTube and Google ads. Everyone knows about this stuff. So you've gotten all these leads and similar. Now what? Now what do we do with the fulfillment side of things, which is way more difficult than generating leads? Because now you're dealing with actual people and it's not numbers on a screen and you're just tweaking, just how to optimize the ads or whatever. And of course, I forgot to mention the funnel, of course, which is fundamental. And you have to send people somewhere and that needs to be optimized as well. But again, that stuff is well known. And so the hole that I saw in the market and sort of where my program comes into play is the fact that the people that are getting the most results with these strategies are the ones who are getting their clients the most results. And it just speaks to the fact that when I'm going inside of a coaching program and joining one, and I'm sure it's the same exact thing for you, what I'm looking for is someone who I know for a 100% fact is A, legit, and B, is going to get me the results that they promised. That is it. And they need to prove that to me. And it's not just by having, a ClickFunnels landing page with 100 Facebook group comments saying how great they are and all these case studies. It's a lot more than that. Of course, there needs to be verifiable proof at the same time, but it also communicates itself in the way that the person composes themselves and the way that they actually position themselves in their ads copy and on their content on YouTube, and to speak to the positive cascading effects that happen when you do position yourself, actually create yourself to be the authority in your industry. It affects every single facet of your business. The way that you show up, if you show up at all, right? If you're on Instagram and you pull up your phone and you're like trying to send people, selfie videos to do like more effective personalized outbound, you're going to speak with the utmost confidence when you know for a 100% fact that you get people results. When you show up on the ads that you're blasting out to everyone on YouTube, the same exact thing is going to happen. When you then show up on YouTube, when you're producing content and perhaps repurposing it all across the internet, you're also going to show up with that confidence. Now, that's just you as the entrepreneur. And of course, you are the source of all of this stuff, and it has to start with you. If this energy is not coming from you, we cannot expect the team to have that as well. Now, if you scale and you have a sales team, they're not going to be able to close people at the rate that you need them to be able to overcome the increased acquisition costs if that team does not know that they're selling the best product on the market. That the sales team needs to know that the people that they're hopping on the phone with, they are their best shot to increasing or even achieving the success that they can have for what their desired goals are. And if you don't have like constant case studies coming in, if people aren't constantly talking about in their communities all the stuff that's happening and all the positive effects, your sales team is going to get demoralized very, very quickly. And they need to be seeing this stuff every single day. And of course, the positive feedback that you get from your clients builds the foundation. The whole thing is like, how do we create experiences where we can actually take our clients to the next level, where they're begging us for more, where they become a part of our business? And so this is something that I'm extremely passionate about, because I look around and people just don't really seem, high-level entrepreneurs don't really seem to care about their clients. It's always just getting more. Yeah. And not just on like some ethical or moral stance. I think it's foolish, because saturation is a thing. Like audience fatigue is a thing. If you keep on saying the same thing to the same people over and over again, the river is going to run dry at some point. And the way that you can ensure that that never happens is to, of course, give your existing clients the best experience they possibly can, sell them more stuff, leverage that experience to then increase the conversion rates for the outbound and inbound stuff that you're already doing. So yeah, anyways, it's essential.
Yeah, I love that. And that was going to be a great lead into some practical steps around that. But, the client acquisition is important. How you do that client acquisition, putting your best foot forward, showing up in the best place is great. And then obviously delivering great results. And I'm with you, Alex. So many people just putting out something for the sake of putting it out. It's not great quality. People aren't getting results. They're wasting money, spending money on tactics or coaching or courses that are not making a difference. And I see the trend changing as people get more savvy to those tactics. They're not willing to accept that. They have higher expectations. And with everyone being locked down for so long, I see a real trend that people are looking for more of that personalized experience. And exactly what we've talked about, that one thing with one coach, that one direction. Obviously, it's great if you have different sources of information. Not one coach can be an expert in everything, but at least it's that one central place to come to, so that if I say, hey, I'm not an expert in lead gen, but my buddy here, Alex, is, you're coming through a vetted way. So I like the approach of showing up to your best ability. Obviously, lead gen, you always want people coming in, but it's not about the numbers. It's about the results that you're getting for people and giving people that amazing experience. So why don't we talk about that? I'd love to hear a few practical things that you're doing to help your clients, for example, or to get success, or where you're seeing other clients tips or tactics that they're doing to help ensure that clients are getting success.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is the whole point of the conversation here. So hopefully everyone at this point is going to take notes on this stuff, because I want to make sure that, everyone's getting some very tactical things that they can implement in their business today that will make a massive difference. And close off the recognition of the problem is that when it comes to optimizing fulfillment and creating the best experience for your customer, most coaching programs that I've personally been through, and from what I've heard from my clients, the people will either quite literally tell you this or essentially tell you to just use your brain and figure it out. And to me, that's a very cheap and lazy way of getting out of what I see as the hardest thing that an entrepreneur can do in the online coaching and consulting space. So actually, what I want to share is the success by default framework that I've created that anybody can implement. We'll go over some basic principles. So 3 core principles that all the actions that they take, is it aligned with these 3 things? Yes or no, and then that can inform their decisions moving forward. And then, of course, share some practical examples of what that looks like in the coaching program. So the very first thing is to remove optionality in your program. And what that means is that you remove the option for your client to fail. So the trend in the online coaching and consulting space is that most clients actually don't even complete the program, and they don't get results. So we're going to flip that on its head and create it to be the inverse, where most people succeed. The vast majority of people succeed. The second thing is to remove friction. So we want to make sure that things are as easy as possible for clients, in both the amount of time that they spend with the product, but also the difficulty of doing the task that you have them do. And the third thing is to incentivize them. So the 3 core principles are remove optionality, remove friction, and incentivize. So to speak to a practical example of the first one, remove option, Kristen Berman did a study. She's a behavioral design scientist. They were studying the rate at which college students were using financial aid. So what they did is they went in and observed, in order to understand, what are the steps that it takes for someone to apply for financial aid? What is the experience like? What are the students saying? So on and so forth. And what they found was that it was over 20 steps just for students to apply for financial aid. It was optional. And that's just in order to apply. So what they went ahead and did is they made the financial aid application process a required part of the enrollment process. And simply by doing that alone and not even changing the minutia of the 20 steps that it takes, they 3x'd the amount of students that received financial aid just by making mandatory. Now, the way that would actually look inside of an online coaching program is, well, one really easy place to implement this stuff is the onboarding call. And that's something that people massively overlook, is the importance of the onboarding call. We all know this. You only get one chance to give a first impression, right? And that onboarding call is your client's first impression with your actual product that they bought. So that needs to be immaculate, the entire experience. And so, but that's just on the quality level. But on a tactical level, what does that actually look like in regards to getting them moving forward and getting them quick wins constantly and easily? So let's say in your coaching program, you noticed that, and of course, this is assuming that you have you're tracking data, you are watching what your students are doing, you have KPIs set around what success looks like for your students and also for your team on fulfilling that success. And let's say you found out that 85% of your clients that got success with your program enhanced their offer within the first 2 weeks of the program. Full stop. And people who didn't do that had a much lower chance of success. What you would do is you would tell your new clients on the onboarding call that, hey, this is what the data shows, so you need to do this. That's good and all, but how do we actually make that part of the process? How do we force them to do this in a way that isn't, parental, and so that doesn't feel lame, and we're still maintaining the positive energy that they have when they come into the program? Well, one way is to, at the end of the onboarding call, let's say you have some sort of templated way by which they can get the ball rolling with their offer enhancement process or some sort of framework, that at the end of the onboarding call and say, okay, everybody do this. You're not getting into the program until you submit your first draft of this. And it's setting the tone for the rest of the experience. You mean business, and this is a serious program, and serious programs get results. Yes, we're friendly and fun and everything, but you did not pay money for you to just watch my training videos. You are going to get results with this, and it starts with you doing stuff right now. And so that's one example of that. And another practical example of that is something that I experienced personally. And my coach did that same exact thing for me. So at the end of the onboarding call, we're talking about what my goals are. We're clarifying that, of course, it was discussed in the sales call, but really getting clear on the expectations with the program, setting the frame with everything. And then at the very end, he was like, all right, Alex, this is all good and all, but are you ready to get to work? And I was like, yeah, sure. He was like, okay, you're going to film your first video right now. And I was like, okay. And he's like, and then he got to the end of it, and he had a template basically for me to follow to film a very short 45-second Instagram story it was basically a call to action, right? And from that one act that took me many tries, but probably around 15 minutes to film, I got 8 sales calls booked with 0 personal brand. I had not done anything thus far. All I did was do what my coach told me to do. In the moment that he told me to do it, I took it seriously, and 8 sales calls were booked instantaneously. That was my first impression with the program. That set the tone for everything else moving forward. And that ultimately led to me just a few days ago closing a $25,000 deal. None of that would have happened without the brand that I'm currently building and the experience with the coach and everything. And so that set, there's a lot of things that happen with that. It seems very simple, but what someone's really paying for in a coaching program is access, proximity, and certainty. And when again, it's not the tactics, it's the access, proximity, and the certainty. So in that moment, of course, I was, relatively certain that it would work because of the testimonials and his persuasion on the sales calls and everything. But this was no longer theoretical. I had just done the most minute thing. I haven't even used the program, and I got 8 sales calls booked. What did that do for my mindset? Now I'm taking massive action, producing 3 YouTube videos a week. Like there's no friction to this anymore. And so that's one very practical example that everybody can implement today. Observe what is the thing that all of your successful clients have done that have gotten them results, and make everybody else do it at the end of the onboarding call. Now, that moves us into the second principle, reducing friction. So one pattern that comes up a lot is people in the online coaching consulting space force their clients to go through 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of mindset training right in the very beginning of the program that damn well they've already heard all of that stuff from other people that's their core offer, and they said it way better than you ever could, and they truly don't need to hear this stuff. Okay. And what's great about the mindset stuff on a hoorah branding level is that a lot of people resonate with it. So they get this immediate, they post in the Facebook group like, oh, this was great, I can't wait to do this stuff. But in most cases doesn't actually translate into action. So what I'm a much bigger fan of is what I mentioned before. Yeah, most people have the positive mindsets, or at least they've heard it. Let's actually prove that they work by making people do this stuff. And so in regards to removing friction, your lessons should not be any more than 20 minutes. Full stop. No more than 20 minutes. And you should not have your client sitting through endless training videos that don't lead them towards the end result. So the way that you actually need to analyze your program is see, okay, what are the absolute essential things that everyone has to do in order to get success, and then remove everything else. And if there's things that you need to add back in, you can use that. You put them back in from the feedback that you get from your clients, not arbitrarily just thinking like, oh, they could use this or they could use this. No, it needs to be based off of data. So that's just with the training program. In regards to the friction, an example, again, from that onboarding call, you can see how it sort of implements all of these things, is that, when templating, creating SOPs for people and just giving it to them, one thing that we did talk about this, but it does bother me as well. A lot of times people like entrepreneurs are like, oh, well, I need to teach my client to do the hard work, and they need to learn, and they need to transform, and they need to basically eat a lot of crap before they can be like me. And they didn't pay you for that.
Mhm.
We're not Jocko Willink. We're not David Goggins. That's not what they paid for. They paid for the transformation. So while it might be true that, they would have an increased success rate if they were able to do this on their own, they're not. And that's why they paid us. So our job, regardless of our politics around the whole thing, is that we are here to get them the end result that they paid for in the quickest way possible, in the easiest way possible, no matter what that looks like. So, you don't force your client to create their own SOPs if they don't have to, especially if you already have them. Don't force them to, create their own sales script. If you have one that works, just freaking give it to them. And especially on a business level too, don't you want testimonials coming in as soon as possible and as quick and as often as possible? That's what it looks like. So that's, the incentive, or rather the reduced friction. And I'll speak to another moment of where this gets nuanced just after this. But the third is incentivizing, right? Really making sure that people follow through with the program. Most people don't complete it. Why? It's because they don't really believe that it's actually going to work deep down inside, and they're not incentivized to continue forward when things get tough. Now, how do you actually incentivize your program? 1 is through urgency. 2 is through a scarcity. 3 is through social pressure. 4 is through positive social pressure, and then positive persuasion. 5 is through accountability, and 6 is through gamification. And so really what you want to do is have systems in place that touch on many of those factors. It's just basically positively exploiting human psychology. And so that's where the behavioral design aspect comes into play. Now, one thing I want to mention as well, when it comes to getting people, results with this framework, and then also what it actually looks like on a ground level is, as we mentioned, you basically have to observe your program, look at the data. One thing that a lot of people do, which is kind of obvious, it's just like school. You just have your clients turn in homework, basically. I think that's nice, but it's not in line with the second principle of reducing friction. And so when it comes to basically forcing your client to do stuff, but without ruining the momentum, you have to be very intelligent as to what those things are. So to speak specifically, there's generally 1 to 5, the sweet spot's usually about 3 essential things that every single client has to do to get success in your program. And they're kind of like the 1 to 3 benchmarks within the program.
Mhm.
Those things are required. They cannot move on into part 2 or part 3 of the program until they've turned in that work with that fundamental, essential thing that they have to do. To speak to a previously mentioned example, let's say it's the offer enhancement. That's what that would look like. Let's say, in my old job in the publishing world, what that was their keyword research, their book outline, and the actual book itself. Like, they had to present it to me before they went and launched it and started running ads to it. And I would basically sign off on every single book that was published. So those were the 3 things in that regard. And, and every single program has this stuff. So it's very easy to basically distill down what these things are. Now, so it's this dance between having a tailored and customized approach and having a standardized approach so that you don't have this massive operational drag to where things aren't productized to the point where you literally can't scale. So in regards to gated content, just to make this point clear, you still need to make sure that you're reducing friction. So one might say, well, if we're gating the content, then we're not reducing the friction. Well, we need to have some level of structure here so that people are moving forward, but not to the point where we're stifling them and making things lame. And so what that would look like, again, is gating those 1 to 3 benchmarks, and then actually doing that task. We would reduce the friction to doing the task. That's what I'm talking about. And the positive downstream effects of this will be very obviously experienced almost immediately, but your adherence rates go up, meaning people actually use the program. Your operational drag goes down because they have a system to actually work through. Therefore, the cost and the size of your team to fulfill things is less. Your mental capacity that gets taken away from you having to think about all this stuff is lifted. So then you, as the entrepreneur, can then focus on the money generating activities, which we talked about previously, is going to be lead generation, producing content, and then of course, crafting back-end offers, or really it would just be one. So, and really working on the business as opposed to inside of it, which is a thing that people hear a lot. And then of course you create yourself to be the undeniable authority in your industry, literally undeniable. And then your clients are literally begging you for more. They're like, what's the next big thing? When you build that level of trust, they're going to tell you what they want. So we don't have to think about these things.
So practical, and clearly you're a fountain of knowledge in this place. And I want to, although Alex has the sort of foundational level and the more advanced tactics in that conversation, really there's some very simple points that he brought out of that. Well, my takeaway, I was taking some notes as you were talking through that as well. Quick action right at the outset, and making sure people are seeing real results up front, and making them put in a little bit of effort before they're even allowed into your course, like making them do something. And the example that Alex gave was doing something and they immediately saw a result. I can definitely see how that gives people the right mindset and the momentum to come forward. The other thing that I think people could easily do is boil down your program into the essentials and cutting down those modules into 20-minute chunks. Everyone can do that without a big complicated system. Give people stuff. Don't try and make them do the difficult things if you've already got a template out there. So I loved that. I also like the tip about what are those essentials that they need to do. I work with a lot of creative people. They don't always love the structure and everything that goes along with courses and programs. So really help distill down for them what are the essentials and incentivize. Great practical tips, Alex. And I think the action that I would challenge anyone listening or watching this is to go out and have a look at your own program and look at some of the spots where you could start applying some of these things. Even if you applied one of these things, maybe you've got a 3-hour module. The first step is to try and break that into, 10, 20-minute segments. That's what we're talking about. These are the essential item. You might not be able to change everything in your program up front. People could easily change the onboarding process, and even if it's an application before they get on a call with you, and maybe at the end of that call, one more step before you finalize that sale with them, all makes sense for your business. Try and take one step of action. So Alex, we're just about wrapping up. You've shared so much amazing, valuable information with us today, and I'm going to let people know how they can contact you. But is there any last piece of advice you would have, whether it's to do with client success or acquisition or just anything in business that you would like to share with people on the call today?
Yes, there's two things that I also want to mention before we sign off. One of them is how to optimize your fulfillment process with the actual coaching. So when it comes to one-on-one, I believe we hear this a lot, that one-on-one doesn't scale. I think that's total BS. And the way that people do it doesn't scale, that's for sure. And it doesn't scale it when it's unlimited. And it's also not valuable when it's unlimited because it's not scarce. Is the way that you want to do this is that you need to have a system for which your clients basically apply to get a one-on-one call with you or whoever your client success manager or head coach is. And so the way that you want to do this is to get a JOT form. And because JOT form is an if-then application where you can basically create, it's kind of like, it's an if-then application process. So that's one practical thing that people can implement today that'll help reduce the operational drag. The next thing that I want to talk about is how to actually group coach effectively. There's a lot of things you can do with group coaching. You can coach one-on-one in the group setting, basically with an audience. So what you do is people get one-on-one coaching, and then basically everyone else is watching, and they jump on with their camera, just like a one-on-one call. It just so happens that everyone else is watching. And so that's a teaching moment for everybody. And it also incentivizes the person. You can get a free one-on-one call, but you're going to have the courage to talk about this stuff in front of everybody. Mm-hmm. So that's one way you can do it. The second thing that I really, really like that is largely underutilized is role playing. So what you can do is essentially put everyone in the breakout rooms, and they can role play. That'll be fun, and that'll be a good piece of content. And of course, you should be recording all of your calls and repurposing it for content that shows that you're actually doing the thing. You're not some fly-by-night kind of coach. And also they get to feel like they're inside the program, and that incentivizes them to move. They can role play so that they're still learning these skills, but it's in the soft and fluffy container of the coaching program. And then they'll be ready because they went through the training grounds to actually land that big deal and do the things that they know they need to do, but they don't want to do. And of course, that largely is overcome by massive action. So why don't they just take the action with us? And of course, you can have coaches hop into these breakout rooms and coach in this manner. And so those are two things that I wanted to mention in that regard with the group coaching. And so, yeah, that's pretty much everything. I want to make sure that people can apply this stuff instantly. And as Natasha said, maybe even just one of these things. Don't throw all this stuff into your program, because you want to have a scientific perspective with this. We want to isolate variables, keep everything the same, and just change one. See what happens. It worked, cool. Let's change another. And then you just kind of iterate from there. So the biggest takeaway are 2 questions that were posed to me, one by Alex Kerr, absolutely massive entrepreneur in this space. And this is really the impetus to my entire program at this point. And the question is, if you could not get any more clients in the current cohort of clients that you had, or the last clients that you'll ever get, but you still had to grow your business year over year, what would change? What would their client experience be like? What would the results they would get be like? What would you be doing? What would you not be doing? That question is the first principle behind getting your clients massive success. Whatever the answers are, you do that thing. That's what you do. And then the second thing in regards to having a super badass offer that people can't say no to is that what are the things that your competition is refusing to do? What are the things that they do not want to do? Just do that. And just by doing that one little thing, you're differentiating yourself from everybody else. So I hope those 2 questions were useful, and maybe you guys got some value out of my rants here. But anyways, this was really fun.
Yeah, amazing. I love those 2 questions. They're really important. And in terms of simplifying it down, if you don't take away anything else from the conversation today, thinking about those 2 questions that Alex just shared with you. So Alex, you do have a special offer for our listeners. The first 3 listeners who sign up through Alex's link, which I'm going to leave in the show notes here, they will be able to get $1,000 off your flagship offer, which is absolutely amazing. So if you're interested, take action. That's what this is all about. Alex has just been talking about action, and I'll leave those notes in that list in the show notes. And follow Alex and see what he's up to. You can follow him on Instagram at Alex Kerr with 2 R's at alexkerr.co, or you can check out his YouTube channel, Clientsuccess Systems, and I'll be leaving all the links to that. So Alex, it's been a fantastic conversation. As I say, you had just a fountain of knowledge. You've got some really amazing information to share, both on a practical level, at a coaching level, on a technology level. And this is the kind of level that we all need to be upping our game a little bit to be thinking about things differently, simplifying down, getting into action, and ensuring our clients have all the success that they can to bring us all the success that we desire as well. So thanks so much for your time today, Alex.
Thank you, Natasha. This was freaking awesome. So thank you.
Amazing. And if you'd like my help to grow your business the simple way, you can visit me at inspireanddrive.com, download my simple business blueprint, or schedule a discovery call. So that's all from me for today. Join me again in the next episode, where I'll be sharing more expert information and live coaching so that you can get the best and most effective business tips on how to grow your business the simple way.